The office of President of the United States is one of the most powerful positions in the entire world. He is an ambassador to other countries and commander-in-chief of the military. He even has the ability to affect the nation's political agenda. With the environment issues, the debt crisis, and debates over gun control, it's obvious that the president has a lot on his plate. But a very important issue is often ignored when it comes to the nation's dialogue. That issue is capital punishment. There are several reasons that people continue to support the death penalty. Unfortunately, these reasons are not based completely on fact. Some of the common myths about the death penalty are that it acts as a deterrent for future would-be criminals, that it is cheaper than a sentence of life without parole, and that it is the only way to stop violent criminals from continuing to commit heinous acts. To find the real answers to these questions, we interviewed Dave Keedhold, the former warden of Monroe County Correctional Facility.
More and more states are starting to abolish capital punishment. It is proven that it doesn't really work to deter crimes. Because when you are higher than a kite, you just don't know what you're doing. And you do some really bizarre stuff. That brings the evil out of people. When you sentence somebody to death, you have all these appeals factored in. It is very costly. Because, if you put somebody to death, it may take 20 years before they actually execute them, or longer. There are some cases that's gone even longer. And then what happens is you're putting them in a really highly restrictive area, and the person's not a problem, but you're putting them in a highly restrictive area. And this is what you have to do. You have to treat them as though you segregate them from everybody else. They're not allowed to see anybody else. It's a specially designed area that's probably got so many different levels of security, very expensive to build, and very expensive to maintain. I personally don't see inmates living as long as you or I would. There's a precept out there that they're from the public saying that they go in there and they get all these surgeries done and get this done, get that done. Well, I don't know what you're talking about, because I see what they do. They fix the hurt. That's it. I do believe in repenting, and I feel as though there should be some sort of restitution, but it's tough. Best thing to do is, my personal belief, is just locking them up for the rest of their life. No parole.
While many reasons that people have for supporting the death penalty are invalid, not all their arguments are incorrect. Those opposing the death penalty sometimes argue that race plays too large a role in deciding who lives and who dies. Mr. Keedhold, however, asserts that he does not believe it does. While this is a comforting fact, this often used argument is still not completely solid. Just because something is not bad does not mean that it is necessarily good. Opponents state that capital punishment violates the Eighth Amendment, which protects United States citizens from cruel and unusual punishment. In the case of Furman v. Georgia, which resulted in the death penalty receiving a short moratorium, the ruling was that in order for a sentence to not violate the Eighth Amendment, there must be no other effective and less harsh option. Proponents of the death penalty will argue that since most states use lethal injection, no undue pain is being caused. Instances of failed or botched executions nullify this argument. Take the cases of Joseph L. Clark and Rommel Broom, for example. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, it took technicians 22 minutes to find a vein in which to insert the catheter. A few minutes after insertion, however, the vein collapsed and Clark's arm swelled. He announced that it was not working, and the curtains around his gurney were shut, as technicians struggled for 30 minutes to find another vein. Reporters claimed to have heard moaning, crying, and guttural noises. Death was not pronounced for more than 85 minutes after the execution had begun. On September 15, 2009, the execution of Rommel Broom was scheduled to take place. Technicians again struggled to find a usable vein, while Broom is said to have winced and grimaced with pain. Throughout the procedure, Broom attempted to help the technicians find a vein. The Death Penalty Information Center says that he then covered his face with both hands and appeared to be sobbing, his stomach heaving, as he endured 18 attempted injections with needles, sometimes hitting bone. The execution was eventually put to a stop and rescheduled for a week later, although lawyers argued that a repeat execution attempt would finally qualify as cruel and unusual. Even more morally questionable than these attempted executions are some of the successful ones, such as the execution of Cameron Todd Willingham, who, despite overwhelming evidence of his innocence, was executed for the murder of his own daughters in 2004. And according to statistics, it's improbable that he's alone. The Death Penalty Information Center shows that since 1973, 142 people have been released from death row with evidence of their innocence. In the United States, as of October 1, 2012, there were 3,146 people on death row. How many of them are awaiting the evidence that will prove them innocent or guilty beyond a doubt? It is clear that the death penalty results in prolonged loss of lives. Not only that, but its constitutionality is questionable.
Death penalty may be a very bad idea, but no American ever voted to adopt a constitutional provision that eliminated it. Now, the living constitutionists will say, well, times have changed, and it's up to me to decide what's called an unusual punishment. That's a constitution that has no bite.
So what solution is there to this problem? Mr. President, this is where it's up to you. The President is seen as a symbol of power and of support. Being a man of the people means recognizing their opinions. Being an active citizen means supporting the President and recognizing his decisions. Together, balance can be achieved and issues resolved. The death penalty is punishment, but is it cruel and unusual?